This is the final project presentation for MSc 6550 Sports Psychology by Nick Patnode. Both of the studies discussed here take into account the psychobiological model of athletic performance, whereby the maximal effort of an athlete is proposed to be relative to the maximal psycho-emotional performance the athlete can achieve. The first study I'll review here is called Taking Yourself Out of Exhaustion, the Effects of Self-Talk on Endurance Performance. This study attempted to review the physiological and performance responses to positive self-talk training in recreationally trained athletes. Measures were taken for the participating athletes with baseline peak power output, PPO, calculated, and HR, heart rate, RPE, rate perceived exertion, and facial EMG used as indicators of maximal performance. There were no significant differences in between group data. Following initial and follow-up TTE, time to exhaustion, testing, this is the data that was achieved. The most significant indicators here are the difference in cadence and facial EMG compared to the physiological effort, heart rate. The data represented here indicates after a 2-week program on self-talk, the self-talk group decreased their physical exertion and increased performance at the same effort, heart rate. The second study reviewed was on the non-conscious visual cues related to affect and action altered perception of effort and endurance performance. This study involved using subliminal visual cues and mood priming to again affect the performance of recreationally trained endurance athletes. Participants here were initially tested and PPO was again used. RPE, HR, and facial EMG was also used to determine the perceived exertion. Participants were subjected to each of the testing conditions, which was happy or sad, in a single-blinded crossover study over the duration of 2 weeks. Taking a look at the data graphed here, when exposed to the happy condition, RPE still achieved the same value, though it was extended in duration. The participants were able to continue at the same effort for longer when subliminally cued positively. To further these data, there were no significant differences at the termination of the TTE trials. Participants all maintained similar blood lactate concentrations, heart rate, RPE, and cadence at the voluntary termination of the TTE testing protocol. This would suggest that the psychobiological model of exercise performance could be a likely reason for the performance improvement. In reviewing these data from both studies, some of the issues that I came up with and potential research improvements include the fact that this was a weekend warrior type athlete test and it could be beneficial to use elite populations and determine their performance differences. How does the trait versus state self-efficacy influence results related to mood states? What is the difference in performance related to baseline mood levels? And are these typical or general mood states? I personally use positive self-talk techniques, including writing positive affirmations on my blanket arm, and from a conscious perspective, I find great value in seeing a familiar face or cheering crowd in providing an extra surge of energy. I'm certain if there were all sad faces, I would be far less likely to be able to push as hard when situations are more difficult. That being said, I'm interested in the quantitative values associated with these interventions in an elite population, though this data would be difficult to parse out, as I believe elite athletes get to where they are through a combination of strong physical and psychological traits, of which they have likely developed certain mental skills that have provided a foundational framework that would need to be addressed in data interpretation.